The Ordinary just launched Haircare, and the big question is it going to help me with my hair loss? And are they coming for the Inkey list? The Ordinary and the Inkey list are skincare brands that like to focus on minimal ingredients and affordable prices and transparency and honesty. And the Inkey list came out with Haircare not long ago, which they actually redid because of some of the issues with the bottles and the packaging. But literally, as of today, the Ordinary showed up at my doorstep and they have Haircare. They have shampoo for body and hair, they have conditioner, and they actually have hair-like serums for both hair growth and restoration, which, we've spoken about, and also a natural moisturizing factors plus hyaluronic acid. But this is very different from the skincare. This is for the hair care. And I am very intrigued and ready to rub some of these into my scalp. So let's talk about what's going on here. Let's then compare to what's happening here. And let's also discuss who this is going to be for and who it might not be for. For example, hair loss. What does that mean for those of us with the hair loss or the frizzy hair or coily hair? My natural hair texture is very curly. What does this all mean? And also, why is the Ordinary doing this? Again, did they see the Inkey list and they're just like, oh, we have to do this too? But knowing how long it takes to formulate things, were they just like, no, we've been planning this for a while? But then because they have more basic ingredients, was it just like, we see other people doing it, so we're gonna jump on the bandwagon? I don't know. But what I do know is that my scalp is ready. Also, hi, look at me. I dressed up all nice and pretty today to go absolutely nowhere, probably just as a way to procrastinate and deal with my crippling anxiety, which no, is not due to the caffeine. Like, it's actually crippling anxiety. It's been horrible. It's great. These two launches are the most interesting, and I have to say, I love the packaging and the price. This is basically a sulfate 4% cleanser for body and hair. Now they're saying this is for body and hair, and when you think about it, it's true. Our scalp is technically part of our integumentary system, whether it's the hair that protrudes from it or the scalp itself. But the scalp is slightly different. Specifically, the microbiome of the scalp is different than our face or the rest of our body. And there are areas like our armpits or the groin that maybe need different ingredients or special attention. And the scalp is also more prone to things like dandruff or fungal infections. So what works for the scalp doesn't always work on the body, but there are times that crosses over. The question is, what are they doing with this? So they're calling it a sulfate cleanser for body and hair, which kind of makes sense. But for hair care, you would want to make sure that you're cleansing without overstripping. But when you look at the actual ingredients of this, they are basic as fuck. This is basically like the simplest shampoo that you could ask for. But from what we expect from the Ordinary, being simple, clinical formulations with integrity, I'm not completely mad about it. I don't know, I have to put it on my scalp. This has water, it has sodium lauryl sulfate, which this is their sulfate that they're talking about. This is their SLES2. They claim that this is a more gentle type of sulfate, and it's like revolutionary, and it doesn't overly strip the way other sulfates do. But this is honestly the exact same sulfate marketing that we've heard from so many other companies for so long. It's basically like, hey, we have sulfates! Good job. This is basic AF. And from the Ordinary, that's actually what we expect. Now, if this were any other brand and you were paying more than $10, oh, I'd be so upset. But for the amount, you know, for the brand, it's $8. It's not horrible. I do have to try this like on my actual scalp, but this has some of the most basic ingredients. They're non-stripping. You have some tocopherol, so a little bit of vitamin E in there. Like, I don't know what to, like, this is nothing fancy, but at least it doesn't have fragrance. Now, they're also saying that this works for the body. The only other thing that I absolutely love for both the scalp and the body is if there is a condition such as fungal acne, which isn't actually acne. Ketoconazole or Nizoral can help of certain itchiness of the scalp and of the skin. There are different fungi that can take over our bodies and yes, our hair, but you know, is this really one that should be going on the body? I don't know. Let's actually smell it. Since it is fragrance free, we are going to patch test this. And that is something that I appreciate about this launch, like right off the bat. They say very clearly on the website to patch test, oh, got a bubble, to patch test everything. And yes, sulfates are known for their bubbles, which we like. The other thing that comes to mind when I am comparing this to what we have from the Inkey list is that the Inkey list is very targeted. So they have things like a glycolic acid scalp exfoliator or a salicylic acid scalp treatment for those who have like hairline acne. So far, we're not seeing anything like that from the Ordinary, but I do wonder and presume that it is coming. So here's my little patch test. We're gonna leave this on for 24 hours and see if it freaks me out. Based on the ingredients, it absolutely should not. That's actually a very large patch test. The best place to do this would be behind the ears, but hi, she did her hair thanks to her crippling anxiety, and she's not about to undo it even though she's dressing up for nobody other than herself. So we're not going to jeopardize the hair by putting shampoo behind our ears today. Now, to pair with the shampoo, they also launched a conditioner. This is the Behentrimonium Chloride 2% conditioner. It's a lightweight conditioning formula. And just like the shampoo, it's fragrance-free, but it's basic AF. Like, I was expecting to see something interesting in here. It is simple pimple. Now, what is this Behentrimonium Chloride? I was actually kind of surprised to see this in here. Normally we find Behentrimonium methyl sulfate, which is related but different, and that's a very conditioning sort of ingredient that you find in like a lot of thick, really rich hair, either conditioners or balms or even some pomades. But this happens to be the Behentrimonium Chloride. And on The Ordinary's website, they're basically saying that this offers conditioning to the hair. It kind of helps to coat the hair and to, you know, put some of that water that you get in that shower, kind of lock it in and leave the hair feeling smooth and soft. But it kind of leaves me with the same question of, well, who is this for? Obviously, this is for somebody who has a sensitive scalp, you know, who maybe has irritation to fragrances or other dyes or things inside of hair care. But it's also like, is this for really coily, curly hair? Like, would this even work for coily, curly hair? Is this for low or high porosity hair? Basically, how hair reacts to water and to the different products that we put on it. You know, is this for someone who has damaged hair or really healthy hair? And I do wonder if this would actually hold up to my very dry, curly strands. You know, it looks like I have a lot of hair because it's curly, but when you actually grab the hair, it's not very thick. Like, it's very, very thin. And I'm actually very interested to see Curly Chemistry or Mains by Mel. They are two amazing people here on the YouTube platform, and they speak the science. I would love to see their thoughts on this for curly hair, and I'm kind of waiting for them before I, you know, figure out what's going on with this, because as you can see, based on conditioning, no pun intended, I feel better, you know, having my hair smoothed out rather than kinky and coily. When I was younger and at a photo shoot with a hairstylist, I was told that my kinky curly hair looks like pubes. So that left some emotional damage. So this is actually going on in a very silky manner. It's kind of getting creamy. It feels, you know, very lightweight. It feels less like a conditioner. Conditioners tend to have a little bit more give to them, a little bit less waxy and a little bit more powdery than I was expecting. It is a liquid, but based on the ingredients, this seems quite simple, and I'm excited to try this out in my hair. For $8, is it worth the money? It's 8.1 fluid ounces, so it's definitely not horrible, and I think the real benefit that I'm just seeing off the bat here is the fact that it is a fragrance-free, dye-free option. And when you have these base formulas, you know, DIYing your skincare or like mixing and layering things can be very dangerous, because if you're not a cosmetic chemist, you don't know how they're going to react. But for someone who is a skintellectual, or for someone who does have a background in chemistry, or, you know, who is confident in asking the right questions and taking things a step at a time and patch testing, I actually almost wonder if these could be like base formulas that you could then like drip a little bit of glycolic acid or salicylic acid into, and you could almost customize your own hair care routine at home. I don't know if that's what they're going for with this. I know that with The Ordinary, the way that I like to use The Ordinary's products is by layering them. I kind of wonder if there's the potential to do that here. And that's what excites me the most, because there isn't like 10 million ingredients in one. But at the same time, for someone who's much less confident with my hair than I am with my skincare and with the cosmetic chemistry and the anatomy of skin, I am kind of sitting here like, ooh, I don't know. Is this what's right for me? Like, should I be sticking with my Shea Moisture for my dry split ends? Now, this is where things get a little more interesting with these hair serums. And specifically, The Ordinary launched this natural moisturizing factors and hyaluronic acid. But this appears to be quite different from the NMFHA that goes on the skin. You know that that is a great basic moisturizer. Again, very non-irritating. I would assume that this would be very non-irritating as well. But this actually has a much milkier formula, and they do say that this is specifically made for the scalp. When we think of skincare for the scalp versus the face, we do have to consider how the face reacts to products, how many sebaceous glands there are, how much oil they produce, what microbes live in these areas. And specifically for hair, different charges of products can impact how things stick to the hair or how things absorb into the scalp, and then how they stimulate either hair growth or healthy hair, or how they coat the hair for shine, which for the skin is similar, but it is slightly different, right? Vellus hair, which we see coming out of our faces, is not the same target as the hair that is protruding from our head. And the skin here, you know, with our pores and getting things into our pores is very different than trying to stimulate hair growth, you know, in a follicle up here. So those are some of these differences. And the first thing that comes out is, wow, this is really liquidy. I wonder if this is like a liquefied version of the NMF. This almost comes out, oh, extremely milky. This is definitely more like an essence than it is even a serum. And it is completely fragrance-free. Now, the big claim with with this is that it is a lightweight hydrating serum for scalp, for maybe those who do have dryness. But when we actually look at the ingredients, there are a couple of things in here that are interesting. We do have a bunch of amino acids, which are phenomenal, but we've also got some sugars in here. And especially if you are applying this, after you've washed and conditioned your hair and gotten out of the shower and it's still damp, I could see a lot of these, sugars kind of adding moisture and hydration to this scalp area. This does have specifically fructose, sucrose, and glucose, but it's also got manganese PCA, we have zinc PCA, we have magnesium PCA, urea, which is actually mildly exfoliating, as well as lactic acid, which is mildly exfoliating. And so I could actually see this being really beneficial for people who have scalp buildup and almost a dry scalp. Now, I'm the type of person who deals with more of an oily scalp, so the first thing that pops into my mind is, ooh, is this even a good idea for me? You're supposed to put this on when you're not in the shower and like massage it in at night. It's like a leave-in treatment. I would actually wonder if for someone like me who has a very oily scalp but very dry hair, if this would be a disaster. If you've ever used minoxidil to prevent hair loss, it's basically a medication that you can put on your scalp that prevents your hair from falling out. It is greasy. It is pretty gross. It is not the funnest and many people hate it. And I don't think that this is quite as greasy, but I wonder, if this is kind of taking us down that same path. Now, for someone who does have scalp irritation, dandruff, if you have eczema or psoriasis, this is not going to treat or cure any of those conditions, but could this be a nice supplementary scalp serum to that? Quite possibly. This is actually very interesting. I love all of the amino acids in here. And when I compare this to, some of the other products, I'm much more intrigued. And also when I compare this to the actual skincare, skin is skin is skin, and there are some differences, but I would go out on a limb and say you could probably use this on the face if you did patch test it. It does come in a little bit more expensive at $12.80, but comparing that to everything else on the market, especially for a scalp serum, this is not bad. The main ingredients in here are the hyaluronic acid and the squalane. So again, really focused on delivering hydration and moisture into the scalp and locking it in. But seeing as it does have that squalane oil in there, I'd wonder how that works for those of us who aren't super dry and who do have, a bit of an oily scalp. But overall, very intriguing. They specifically state on the website that the pH is 4 to 5, and the skin likes to hang out between a 5 and a 5.5. So again, this might be something that someone could theoretically put elsewhere on their skin as well, as long as you patch test. It is a much more liquidy formula. And when we compare this to kind of what the Inkey List has, I feel like we do need to go neck to neck with some of these products. I don't feel like the Inkey List has a really comparable product to this. Again, they have these products like a curl defining chia cream. They have a PCA bond repair for damaged hair. A lot of those are targeted to this portion of the hair, so the hair shaft after it's dead and kind of coming out and dealing with damage. Whereas a lot of their scalp things, they do have a volumizing hair treatment, which we can compare to this other one in just a second. But a lot of the things like the nourishing oil or, the exfoliating scalp treatments, they really don't compare that much. I think that the closest one would be this hyaluronic acid hydrating hair treatment. This is more of a frizz control serum though, whereas this is more of a scalp hydrator. And I do feel like they're different, but I do think we should also go neck to neck with these and see how they actually compare. But speaking of comparisons, let's also talk about the multi-peptide serum for hair density. This, as someone, who has a receding hairline, whether it is just regular pattern baldness, if it's something to do with my one kidney, if it's my vitamin D levels, if it's stress, who knows? But something's going on here and she's ready to fix it. This is quite exciting. And this is basically all of the patented molecules, all of the peptides. The Ordinary was basically just hey, you know how our buffet serum is really good? Let's do that, but make sure that it works for the scalp and hair. You get a peptide, you get a peptide, you get a peptide, you get a peptide. This one is the most expensive. This comes in at $17.90, but they do say that it's a concentrated serum, and it is specifically for hair that wants to look thicker, denser, fuller, and healthier, which yes, is exactly me. This almost reminds me of Kerastase. There's a physicist named James Bartholomew's who created a whole hair care line and basically, patented peptides to help out with his hair loss, and it works really well. And this sort of kind of reminds me of what was going on there. This specifically has a bunch of these molecules in a water and propanediol base, so it is very liquidy. It's also got a bit of caffeine in here, which was nice to kind of see as an antioxidant. But this also has that Camellia sinensis leaf extract that we know from green tea. It has a bunch of peptides that we see in skincare, but then it does have a couple things that look pretty exclusive to hair. They have Rondesyl, it looks like they have Procapil, they have Bicapil, they have Capixyl. They have a bunch of the stuff, and then they put a whole bunch of other ingredients in here here to basically help with how the hair is supposed to grow and how dense it is supposed to look and feel. Now this does look like something that you would have to use over time to see benefits. I would assume 3 to 6 months. And they specifically show all of the patents that they're using. And I think that's why this is more expensive, because a lot of these ingredients are proven to work, but they are basically using them that are owned by another company. So they have to pay a higher price because they didn't develop these ingredients on their own. They're basically taking them together and putting them into their new blended formula in their own unique way. But that's why I think it's $17, whereas some of the other things are 12, and 8. This is the one that I am personally most excited about because of my own personal problems with my hair. And again, this does have some oils in it, but it seems to be a little bit less oily than the Natural Moisturizing Factors one. And the fact that this also has antioxidants in it is really nice to see. Our hair is, exposed to a lot of environmental damage, and unless you wear a hat all the time, a lot of people aren't putting sunscreen like in their scalp line or in their hairline, which arguably we should be doing. I've done it a couple times. Sometimes I use these things like if I'm at the beach, but that is not something I do every day. And we know that the sun damages the scalp and the hair, and that free radicals from pollution, from the weather, from basically living and internal and external stress can do a lot of damage. So these antioxidants are really a nice boost to see here. I should be wearing hats more often. I should find like a scalp sunscreen. Does anybody have a scalp sunscreen that they could recommend? Because I have gotten burned, especially as this starts to whiten. This also does have a couple of amino acids, definitely not as many as the Natural Moisturizing Factors, but I really am interested in this formula. I'm just kind of sad that it happens to be the most expensive. And I do want to compare this to the Kerastase one, just because the blend of peptides are different. And I wonder, how these blends of peptides work. When it comes to a lot of peptides and how they actually soak into the root of the hair and whether or not they stimulate the hair growth or hair density, there's not a lot of rigorous science and data to back that up. It's not like minoxidil. So, with some of these over-the-counter claims, that is something that needs to be, kind of watched. These companies shouldn't be saying that this is going to cure your baldness, because that's not what's happening, and we shouldn't create those false pretenses, right? But for the price and for what it is, I do like that The Ordinary is kind of making this accessible and bringing the science to the forefront and taking out, the fragrance or the other things that often confuse a consumer. Now, when I do compare this to what the Inkey list has, I keep on coming back to this. I feel like we need to go neck and neck, like in the shower. Like we need to do like a lowdown, like half and half. They do have this peptide volumizing hair treatment for thicker hair, and this does have a really good blend of ingredients as well, but this one is a much more watery texture, and I almost feel like this might be easier to use depending on how oily your scalp is. And I think that depending on your hair type, some people are going to love these products and some people might hate them. And you see, it's something like this conditioner that kind of gets my gears turning, and I'm like, hey, can I call up the curly chemist and be like, can I throw some salicylic acid in this and use it on my hairline acne? Can I turn this into a conditioning hair mask? I have questions and a shower to get to. What do you think of The Ordinary's hair care? Is this going to be added to your cart? Are you going to be trying these along with me? I'm very excited, a little bit nervous, and that's probably just because of anxiety and the fact that my hair is falling out, but I am also very excited that this is here, and I'm excited for what's to come. I think that the most exciting part of all of these are the potentials and the possibilities of what's to come next. And if they don't have like a deep hair conditioning treatment, well, me and my dry, damaged, curly ends that I have smoothed out are patiently waiting. I have a feeling this is gonna sell out. Are you gonna add this to your cart before it sells out, or are you just gonna wait? I'd like to know. And I will come back with news of this patch test, and if you're subscribed and liked, then a video to come soon. beYoutiful, my butterflies. I'm looking forward to hearing from you soon. Bye!